All right, so a while back, I wrote up an article in Hot Nation magazine on how to make durable latex masks, mainly half masks. You can do it with full head two-piece mold masks too if you want, but it's a pain in the ass. So, anyway, let's get to it. All right, so for this project, we're gonna need some cheesecloth, one paintbrush. I got 3 for $1 at the dollar store, so they're like roughly 33 cents each. I go through these like crazy. You need a pair of scissors, a hair dryer, a mask mold. This is my rotten pumpkin one. And we're also going to need some mask latex. I use the RD407. I imagine you can use the liquid latex that you get from Spirit, but I've never tried it. All right, let's get started. What I did was I rolled out a piece that's big enough to cover this whole mold, and then I cut it into strips. And I leave them double thick to make it easier on myself. You could do it single layers, but then you have to paint in 4 different layers. This way you only have to do 2, and that'll be 4 layers of cheesecloth. Alright, so now you take your brush. It doesn't matter which size brush you use. I just grabbed the 2-inch one. Make sure your mold is cleaned out. You don't have hair and stupid things like that in there. You dip it into latex. What you're going to do is spread a thin layer all over the whole mask, or the whole mold rather. When it comes to some tighter spots, like here around the eyes, I kind of jab it in with the brush, also in the nose area here, and you can see where the latex is going on. Now these things are just the eye sockets of the armature that I sculpted this on. For some reason that I can't explain, I pushed clay down in there instead of building up clay in the eye sockets to meet this part of the eye. So I'm not going to cover this with latex because it's just more I have to cut out anyway. There you go, get a nice thin layer built up everywhere. This is going to bring out the detail of your mask. So after you have it covered, you take your hair dryer, put it on low, and just gently dry out the latex. You'll see it as it dries. It'll go from white to like a yellow color. You can probably see that I have some left over from the last cast right there. That's the color of it when it's dry. I don't know if you can see that good, but it's pretty much dry. Now we're just going to repeat the process. I build up 4 to 5 layers, thin layers, drying them in between with the hair dryer first, before I put the cheesecloth in. You don't have to use the hair dryer on low. You can also use it on high. The reason I don't usually use my hair dryer on the high setting is because it blows my cheesecloth all over the table and then I gotta go chase it, and that's a pain in the butt. If you make them too thick, it takes forever to dry. So that's the reason for doing 5 thin layers versus 1 thick layer. You see sometimes you get a little carried away and you get some thick spots and stuff like that. I don't usually worry about that. You know, this method is a little bit more labor intensive than, you know, the dwell method where you pour the latex into the mask, let it dwell for an hour, dump it back out. And there's also slush casting, which you pour it in, slosh it all around, and dump it back into the bucket. That method gives you run the risk of getting air bubbles. I do use the slush casting method, but I do this first, a few layers of brushing it in, and it just seems to eliminate the air bubble problem. So this has only taken me 15 minutes roughly, maybe not even, to do 4 layers. So now we're starting the 5th layer, and this is the layer I start to put the cheesecloth in. It's pretty much the same thing, only this time I'm not going to dry it right away. It doesn't matter where you start with the cheesecloth. I'm going to start on the bottom. Alright, so I'm going to cut my cheesecloth in half because I don't like really working with the big layers. So I usually start at an edge. Say right here. And I stick it into the latex. So take my brush and I'm just going to jab some latex on there to hold the edge down. It's a pain in the neck at first. The latex will start to, or the cheesecloth rather, will start to stick to the brush, but keep at it, it'll go. Another good thing about the cheesecloth is that it'll stretch quite a bit. Now you notice that I'm not going to press any cheesecloth over the eye because I'm going to cut that out afterwards anyway. Just use a jabbing motion and cover the entire layer of cheesecloth. Now what I did there was I took what was up here, rolled it back into this little socket area to kind of reinforce where the eye is going to be, because in the finished mask I want to put some black see-through fabric there to hide the actor's eyes. So once you've got your base layer of cheesecloth in, you can start to paint in. Just don't go crazy because sometimes the cheesecloth will still stick to the latex and it'll drag it right out of position. I also overlap it just a little bit. I want to make sure that the entire mold is covered with cheesecloth. Now hopefully you can see on the video that the cheesecloth is really covering pretty much every spot up here. I'm going to start working on the bottom piece now. Just wanted to note that where the eyes go, where the breathing holes go, and on a full mask, if I was doing ear holes, I wouldn't cover any of that with cheesecloth. With this particular mask, there's no way really to kind of not put cheesecloth where I'm going to cut out the breathing holes, just because there's so many of them. So I'm just going to go with it, and I just understand that when it comes time to cut these holes out for breathing, it's going to be a pain in the butt. If you get a spot like this little spot right here is not going into place like I want it to, it's being stubborn, you just keep jabbing at it, eventually you're going to win. There we go. Push really hard. Try dragging it a little. If you move your cheesecloth out of place, it's not a big deal. Just cut another piece and stick it in there. So for these areas around the eye, I just cut some smaller pieces, and I'll just try to stick those in there. I also noticed that with this particular nose piece, I crammed quite a bit of cheesecloth in there. So on the next layer, I'm not going to put any cheesecloth in here. I'm just going to focus on the outer areas. Alright, I didn't dry this one thoroughly this time because I'm going to put another layer of cheesecloth in here. After the next layer of cheesecloth, I'm going to dry it thoroughly and paint 3 to 4 more layers on top of that to kind of seal the cheesecloth in there, and then I'll call it done. You could probably get away with just the 2 layers in there, but I'm going to sell this mask, and I want it to last a long time. So I'm not going to skimp on the cheesecloth. So this time I'm going to paint it in sections rather than paint the whole thing on. To kind of show you how that goes. Plus, by doing it in sections, you avoid the latex down here drying before you can get to it. As your latex dries on your brush, it becomes sticky, and the latex in your mold will begin to stick to it and pull your cheesecloth off. So to avoid that, just put a thicker glob of latex on there and then start jabbing, and it should be fine. Alright, so here it is at the second layer of cheesecloth, so it's actually 4 layers thick. I dried it with a hairdryer. Now I'm just going to basically repeat the first steps of painting 3 to 4 layers over the top of this, or just until it's smooth so that you don't feel the cheesecloth through the latex. At this point you can paint rather than jab, but you still want to keep the layers nice and thin. This one looks kind of thick, but it's just the latex is going down into the cheesecloth and just kind of covering it up. But keep it thin, and you can dry it with the hair dryer a lot faster. If you get little chunks of latex in here, which usually happens coming off the brush, you can just pull them right out. Not a big deal. Go right back to it. You know, some of these little areas here where the cheesecloth just kind of came out the side of the mask and didn't get painted down. I'm going to trim the edge of this anyway, so I'm not worried about those at all. At this point, too, your brush is starting to get all gummed up, so you don't have much more time before it starts really making a mess of things, so I try to hurry through the last few layers. This is layer 2. I'll dry this one, I'll do one more, and then I think I'll call this one done. Alright, so I apologize. At some point during the filming of this, my iPhone ran out of space, and the video cut out. I only did 2 layers of latex over it. It pretty much covered. I dried it with the hairdryer for probably 5 minutes, maybe not even. I like to let it sit in front of a box fan for about an hour, and then I'll pull it. Alright, so it's ready to peel out now. And you always want to use some baby powder, so that way the latex doesn't stick to itself when you're pulling the mask out of the mold. Don't need quite as much as I just threw in there, but you could use your hands, a brush, whatever. Just make sure you cover all of the mask before you start peeling it out. Alright, once it's all powdered, it's ready to peel. I just start anywhere at random, wherever it looks like it's easiest to grab. Work my way around. And there it is. I'm going to cut out these eye holes so my actor can see. I'm going to put some black see-through fabric over the eyes so the eyes are hidden. Cut out the bottom part of the nose area and maybe just a couple of these so that they can breathe. And that's it. There's the other side. You can see it's pretty thick. And with the cheesecloth in it, it doesn't, you're not going to rip that.